With all of our UV seams marked on our model, it's time for us to go in and use that information to unwrap all of our UVs and have each island fold flat on our two-dimensional surface. Let's go in and take a current examination of the state of our UVs, and that's what they look like. It's just kind of one big jumbled mess. Because we've marked all of our seams, we can now use that information to fire off the unfold operator inside of Maya. Before we go any further, it's important to point out that whenever we're changing, editing, and creating UVs, we need to have the base UVs selected. So I'm going to jump over in my UV editor. I'm going to grab all of my UVs just with the selection tool. And now I'm just going to snag all of them. I'm going to zoom out, just make sure I got all of them. There we go. And now I can fire off the unfold tool. So you gotta select the UVs and then edit them. So you can find the unfold command under the modified pull down menu, and it's way down here at the top. Because we marked all the seams with the 3D cut and sew tool, we can unfold them across those seams, and this is what it look like. Haha, it's a step in the right direction. I'm gonna change my selection state from the individual UVs into the UV islands. Just a little bit easier to work with these big chunks. I'm gonna fire off the move tool with the W key. Let's start moving these away, and haha, there we go. This is starting to look pretty good, and I have a whole bunch of chunks floating down here in the scene. If you look very carefully, some of these have been unwrapped quite wonderfully. Look at this. Look, this is the body of the bear, and I'm thinking that this is going to be pretty cool. Now, one of the ways that we can check to see if this is in fact working and giving me a good solid understanding is that in the UV editor itself, this little checkerboard icon is a great way for us to test our UVs and to see how this information is going to work. Imagine that this checkerboard pattern is a texture that's going to be wrapped on the model itself. The distribution of the image itself, and let's see if I can select it. Oops, there we go. The distribution and the flow of the checker pattern on the model is going to determine how the texture is, or where the texture is going to warp and distort. And on the body itself, it's looking pretty good. The texture pattern is pretty consistent. We're getting some warping as it goes down into the tail, but that's okay. That was kind of expected. I think that's okay. However, if we were to look at the leg, oh, good golly, Miss Molly, look at how big the warp is in the texture pattern. If we were to put a fur texture pattern on this, it's going to be going every which odd way, and we certainly don't want that. So we have some edits in here that we need to make to eliminate some of this really intense, and I mean, look at this texture stretching. The goal is to have a uniform grid going across the entirety of our surface as much as we can. Distortions are part of it, but this is a little extreme. So how do we fix it? Well, let's go in, and we'll continue to use the unwrap tools to define how this is going to work. I'm going to turn off my texture pattern, my grid pattern, my checker pattern, excuse me, and which will help me kind of visualize what's going on. Now, what one is this? Which island is this? If I go into my UV selection state, this is, in fact, it's the front leg, okay? And I can see that because it's selected in the interface behind. There it is. All right, so now I know which island I'm working with here. All right. Now you look at the UVs. It shouldn't come to anyone's great surprise as to why we're getting this huge warping when we put that temporary checker pattern on the model itself. Look at the ways the UVs are laid out. Keep in mind that this is a cylindrical shape that's turning into a gigantic circle with all the rings stacked on top of each other. Look how odd the distribution of the polygons are within the ring itself. Some are pretty big, some are very tightly packed together. We really don't get any sense of where the features are. If you look really careful, I guess this in here, this is where the knee or the elbow is in this particular situation. We can do better, and what we're missing here is another seam. The seam at the shoulder was a good starting point, but on cylindrical shapes, we also need a seam running down the back of the leg so that when we unfold it, it folds flat, right? Imagine these UV seams kind of like the edges of a cardboard box, where the edge of a cardboard box determines how the paper is going to fold into a flat shape. A cardboard box is such a great metaphor to think about. It starts as a two-dimensional shape, just a flat piece of cardboard, and then we place seams at fold points, and that two-dimensional shape is transformed into a three-dimensional shape. We're doing the exact same thing in reverse, though. We're starting with a three-dimensional shape, and we're figuring out how to fold it flat. So we need some extra seams in here. And this is where I like the UV tool set inside of Maya. It makes it very easy to visualize our problems, and the tools are right here in front of us, so we can go in and change them pretty fast. Okay, so I got my island selected here. I'm going to go in, and as one might imagine, we're just going to use the 3D Cut and Sew tool again. But this time, I need to figure out a good location for all of these seams. Now, we could put a seam in the front or the back. That's a good place to go. We need to find a center line of the cylinder so we can slice it and then fold it flat. I think probably what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do it on the inside of the leg. Because shoot, no one's going to see the seam on the inside of the leg, and there's going to be a lot of natural shadowing happening in that area. So this is an excellent, excellent location to hide a seam. Let's just run it real fast. We'll run the tool. There we go. I'm happy with this. And now with that seam established, let's return to our editor toolkit for our UV editor toolkit. I'm going to select in my selection tool just that UV island itself, and I'm going to unwrap just this one. And I like this about working in Maya because I can edit the seams of a specific area and then just unwrap that one. Helps me understand what I'm doing, manage it, and makes a very strong connection to the edits and the results. Let's do it real fast. Back to the modify command. We'll unwrap it. It's going to use that seam, that new seam that we just added, to establish the unfolding here, and it's done a wonderful, wonderful job. We're not trying to get a perfect grid of polygons. That's impossible. What we're trying to get is a distribution of polygons on the model itself that will give this little checker pattern the best result. So with it on, yeah, look at the check pattern now. Now that check pattern is very smooth. It's very crisp, it's very clean, it's very uniform. If we compare this leg over here to its neighbor on the other side, yowzas, look at all the wave and distortions that we're getting in here. This is what we're trying to avoid. That seam running down the inside of the leg has allowed the computer to unwrap this leg, the one that my cursor is on, in a very, very efficient way that eliminates all of the distortions. Before I go any further, I'm going to do a spot check on each one of my UV islands and begin to experiment with a new recipe of these seams that will allow the computer to unfold all of these islands as flat as I can. And it's a little bit of a process of exploration. I don't necessarily know the solution before I start, but luckily the tools are very flexible and we can use this great workflow to enhance the quality of our UVs.